Today's dumpster dive retrieval has garnered a wide variety of responses. Very interesting. Corny but honest. Bizarre. Yes, this is 1970's The Christine Jorgensen Story. Christine Jorgensen, why does that name sound familiar?
I'm Ed Wood. I'm here about directing the Christine Jorgensen picture.
That's it. Thanks, Johnny Depp. Now shut up. Christine Jorgensen was the real-life inspiration for 1953's Glen or Glenda, written and directed by that infamously terrible film writer and director Ed Wood Jr. A later film that is only slightly less loosely based on the true story is The Christine Jorgensen Story, which claims to be about the first man to undergo sex reassignment surgery and become a woman in the early 1950s. Yes, internet trolls, the 1920s had sex reassignment surgery, eunuchs in ancient Greece, yada yada yada. I'm just the messenger. For the sake of keeping things civil and so nobody gets the wrong idea, I'm just going to, for the moment, take the film itself and its qualities as a film. Okay? The Christine Jorgensen Story stars John Hanson, Joan Tompkins, Quinn Rediker, and a lot of other people that modern audiences don't really know, except maybe for some poor life-ending choices. The film is directed by Irving Rapper, best known for Bette Davis films such as Now Voyager and Deception and others. Yeah. A quote in the beginning of the film basically tells us that whatever you are, you're stuck with it. Que sera sera much? George is looking in a store window at post-sex change Chucky. Some neighborhood boys see George staring at the doll and tease him by calling him Georgette. Any boy who makes this hand motion while calling another boy Georgette might just want to shut up.
There was still a great deal of life to be lived before I would be known as Christine.
Way to give away the plot twist at the beginning.
I bet our dolls want some tea. That's a good idea. We could all have some together.
Okay, as a human being that was formerly known as a little girl, I can tell you right here and now, Hollywood still hasn't figured out how children interact. Mom gets mad that George wants to play with his sister's dolls and tries to make him play with an erector set instead. How Freudian of you, Mom.
Take a look at your erector set. Why don't we build something?
Oh, but you can't, Mom, 'cause you're a girl, remember? Some neighborhood boys interrupt George playing hopscotch to make him play football.
I don't know if I'm good enough.
We ain't got nobody else. Come on!
And then they tease him when he sucks. He told them he wasn't gonna be very good. Despite that, George gets punched, and Dad is way too excited about this.
Everything changes except photographs and the things we remember.
Sorry, Jim Croce, but thanks to Photoshop and selective memory, we know that that's not true.
Football's too rough.
Hey, did you know that football was introduced to America because European immigrants wanted to be able to feel masculine without being allowed to kill Native Americans anymore? And did you know that in 1905, Teddy Roosevelt demanded that the intercollegiate leagues start implementing rules so the players would stop dying?
Of course it is.
Maybe. Mom thinks George needs help because in school the teacher found a doll in his lunchbox.
He's my son, and there's nothing wrong with me.
I'm beginning to wonder about that. George takes a picture of his mother and father, and that starts George's love for photography. Years later, George photographs his sister Dolly's wedding.
On Dolly's wedding night, I was faced with a new and sudden torture.
I keep picturing my sister having sex.
Hold it, that's sensational. Don't move.
You're not photographing me with a goddamn chicken.
It's moments like these that create crazy cat ladies. George's boss, Jess, invites George out for a drink. And here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Jess all but accuses George of being gay and forces a kiss on him. They fight, Jess gets mad and tries raping George. George fights him off and runs away.
With a camera in your hand, you're as good as anybody. Better, maybe.
Wait, is that supposed to convince him to want to live? You're average. Maybe above.
You know the right things to say, don't you?
No, I don't think she does. George begins doing research because he knows his problem is not homosexuality, but what is his problem? Dr. Estabrook tells his class that sex is all in the glands, and wait a minute, George is a medical student now? Maggie the monkey was a normal female, gentle and affectionate, until they started giving her male hormones. Now, she's a nut job. I'm just gonna lay that right there and let you decide what to do with it. George has gone to physicians and psychiatrists and gotten no answers, so now he is appealing to Estabrook. George feels like his instincts and impulses are female. Well, he puts lipstick on as well as any other boy. George knew even when he was in the military that something was wrong.
How can a man who thinks of himself as a female have gone through basic training?
Oh, you know, by prancing through the barracks and crying when sleepy, and fuck you, Dr. Estabrook.
Well, Jorgensen, I have some interesting results for you from that blood test we had made.
Your blood is actually mouthwash.
Your estrogen level reads 96 rat units.
Rat units? Probably not. It seems George's glands are secreting 3 times more female hormones than normal males. Estabrook tells George that there's a doctor in Denmark that has been doing some work with sex change, but it's still in the research and development stage. Isn't it lucky George has an Aunt Thora in Denmark?
We have a saying, you will never grow old if you know you are going to dance at your own funeral.
Well, yeah, I mean, what? From the start, George tells Aunt Thora why he is really there. She feels weird that she knows, but his parents don't. Otherwise, she takes the news of sex change rather well. The Europeans really have always been more progressive than the Americans, haven't they? George sees a photo of a young woman, and Thora tells him that is her daughter whom she lost 19 years ago.
My parents never told me you were married.
I wasn't.
Ooh, scandal.
You keep my secret, and I will keep yours.
I want an Aunt Thora. George goes to see Dr. Dahlman. Dr. Dahlman tells George that America is childish when it comes to sex.
But take a pair of testicles, and everybody explodes.
No, it's more like you take a pair of testicles and the testicles explode, if you know what I mean. Before George signs the release form, Dr. Dahlman insists on describing in graphic detail what he will have to do to George's body.
First I cut off their heads and I pull out their...
Ah, shh! Okay, I'm a girl and listening to this made my penis hurt. Oh, and by the way, this procedure's never been done before, according to the doctor. George's future is at stake.
My reputation might be at stake also.
Yet George signs at screw your reputation speed. Funny how the Danes are speaking English in the operating room. That hair growth is impressive. How long was he in surgery? At the hospital, Aunt Thora presents George with a locket that belonged to Thora's daughter, Christine. This is when George decides to take on the name Christine. Apparently, in 1970, they had the technology to make it look like a man is growing breasts, but not to make a man's voice sound feminine.
Would you mind if I took the name of your daughter?
Like she suddenly developed a split personality. Somehow, the news of Christine's sex change hits the media. Headlines pop up everywhere, comedians make jokes, Dad looks embarrassed, Mom tries to convince him to please go to work tomorrow.
The men there are my friends. What can I say to them?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. How about stop talking about my kid like that and go about your own damn lives? Here's a twist. The minister is trying to convince Dad to accept Christine.
So that he can be the man you want him to be, instead of the woman he had to be?
Mic drop. Back in Denmark, a reporter named Tom Crawford from Globe magazine weasels his way in to talk to Christine. He said it was a clerk in the passport office that leaked the information of Christine's name change on the new passport. That's how the story got out. To escape the pestering paparazzi, Aunt Thora and Christine escape to Thora's lakeside cabin while Tom stays at a nearby inn. What does Aunt Thora do that she can afford a place in Copenhagen and a cabin by the lake? Oh my God, she's a madam, isn't she? That's why she wants George to turn to Christine, so he can... I smell a conspiracy. What's the number to InfoWars? Christine relays a story from back during the army days.
Just leave everything to Angela.
Let me see if I can go find her.
No guy's ever said no to Angela before, baby.
Especially after they've paid her. The hooker ends up laughing Jorgensen out of the apartment. Finally, the romance.
But I'm only supposed to write about you, not think about you.
A few days go by without Tom coming around, then he comes knocking on the window. Hey, there's this thing called a door? The film announces at the end that 13 years later, Johns Hopkins becomes the first United States hospital to undertake a sex change program. The only information I found on how the film was received at the time of its theatrical release was a New York Times review which called it a minor jolt and pleasant surprise, which was handled professionally and tastefully. Now, there are a lot of discrepancies between the film and the real story, such as this not being the first sex change operation or Disneyfying a romance into the entire thing, but otherwise it encompasses the basic overall story. So why is this film in the dumpster despite the relevance of the topic it covers? It's not a great film, but it's also not a bad film. Yes, it's campy, very campy at times, and there are moments that could be perceived as potentially insensitive, which could be one reason. Another probable reason that it's fallen into obscurity, it could be the fact that it really is a product of its time. In 1969, Midnight Cowboy won 3 Academy Awards, making it the only X-rated film ever to win anything at the Oscars. As the 70s progressed, the X rating became more and more associated with pornography rather than anything else. As a result, the acceptance of racier films was progressing and then started regressing. And right at the break in that wave, the Christine Jorgensen Story was released. It's only rated R, but the topic was and still is considered by many in the widespread public to be rather controversial. And it includes nudity such as the supposed budding breasts of a transsexual woman. It seems to put the film in a weird limbo where it's too controversial for some people but too tame for others. If you can accept some questionable acting and dialogue and go into a film with an open mind, then maybe you should consider this film. Being open-minded goes both ways, by the way. That means at least listening to views that are pro-transsexual and views that are anti-transsexual, if nothing else than to gain understanding of where the other person is coming from. Maybe this would be a good way to start an informed discussion. Is showing a boy's interest in dolls and dresses a good way for a film to indicate a future transsexual? If not, what maybe would be a better way? Does having an interest in something that goes against social mores mean anything other than different interests? Given the fact that babies are born every day with physical abnormalities and mental conditions and chemical imbalances, is it so far outside that realm that someone of one gender might be born in the body of another? The one thing about this film that really struck me was a line from the attempted rape scene.
Other men have tried, Jess.
Other men have tried? Tried seducing or tried raping? Many studies indicate that members of the LGBTQ community are more likely to become victims of sexual violence. This makes sense. Rape is a hate crime, and Lord knows the LGBTQ community has experienced a lot of hate over the years. So maybe we should be asking ourselves this. Should victimization of the community be addressed before, during, after, or all throughout these discussions we're having about what bathroom they should be using, or whether they should be allowed in the military, or whether mean people should shut up and eat their own face? I don't really know how you would eat your own face. I am by no means asking you to discuss or answer these questions with me or in the comments below. I know that's not going to stop some of you, but conversations such as these are never resolved in the comment section of a YouTube video. These are conversations that need to be had face to face with people that you know, with that family member that finds being a transsexual morally wrong, or that transsexual friend that has had to face bigotry their entire lives, maybe even from you. You may not change minds or opinions, but the first step is understanding where the other person is coming from. And the best way to do that is through honest, well-intended communication. Check out this film and ask the challenging questions. I dare you. I can't do it. Why do I keep trying?